forgot to press the record button. So we were up here for a second time, Mr. Desiata. How are we doing for the second
Doing,
time today?
doing good, Josh. Doing good. As I mentioned before, better than you because we're not in the snow.
Man, you even had a second chance to redo that, and you still decided to bring up the whole snow situation.
Yeah, I'll always bring up the snow situation because I'm not a part of the snow situation anymore. So it's pretty nice.
What is the weather down there like normally? Like I know you said it was 50 today, but what is it like on like an average day during the winter? And what's it like
I
in the
think this.
summer?
I think this can be fairly average. I mean, there's definitely days. I think last week it hit like 80s randomly, like 75, 80.
Oh my
Um,
god.
but I think a lot of places are hitting a cold front right now. Like I even saw Texas this past week was in its like 30s. So it was like random drops in temperature from time to time. But I think we get pretty lucky with good average of like nice, crispy 60, sometimes 70 days.
That sounds so lovely. Like if the worst days I saw were like 50 to 60 throughout the entire year, that would make my life very enjoyable.
Yeah, man, South is pretty cool for that. I mean, you do pay for the summers, like you walk outside and you're wet just from the humidity. So it's a decent trade off.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit about you here to start off. Let's talk about who you are, what you do, your claim to fame. You've got the floor here, Mr. Desiata.
Oh man, a claim to fame. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a coach for DLD Nation. I think that's my big claim to fame right now. Being an online fitness and nutrition coach is probably one of the coolest things I've done for a job. I've had a number of different jobs in my life. And I really think like that's probably the biggest thing I got going on right now. I put a lot of my time and effort into that. It's something I really enjoy. And I've been lucky enough to do it for almost a year now. Before that, you may have known I was working at GNC, a couple other random jobs like bartending. And I was an in-person trainer for a while too. And then having the opportunity to jump into the online world was, I mean, probably one of the most epic things I've been able to do. And really for me, stepped out of my comfort zone doing that because I did not think like even being on podcasts is something that I would really ever want to do.
It's so crazy when you think about it. You go from kind of working like brick and mortar, like going to work every day, and now you can kind of, you especially can pick up and do your work from legitimately anywhere and not even miss a beat. Do you like that, or do you kind of miss going into work every single day?
I definitely believe there's like some things to miss about going to work. There are very few things like I'll never miss traffic. I'll never miss having to stay later than I want to. But it's like I'll never go back. If I don't have to, I'll never go back. Is for
Yeah.
sure. But like any place I've worked, I tried to make the best of the environment. So like I like the coworkers. Thankfully, like my job, I love all my coworkers. They're fantastic. Like we have group messages. We're always hyping each other up. So it's a really good community there. But like that brick and mortar, as you mentioned, like working in with people, like I did enjoy seeing people. It was fun, like going to the gym, being a trainer, seeing all the different people there. That was fantastic. Now it's, not that we don't see people, but more often than not, I'm just seeing my fiance Maddie, like that's, and my dog.
Right.
That's it. That's our by the water cooler conversations.
I'm I'd say that's the only thing I really miss about going to the office every single day is you don't get as much social interaction.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. If I had to pick something, even if I think for your overall work relationships it might be a little bit better because there's not as much like petty office drama or whatever the case may be involved because you're not seeing people as much. At the same time, I think there are a lot of situations that people cherish just kind of seeing each other and interacting every single day, like the holidays, Secret Santa exchange, stuff like that, which you kind of really don't get anymore at all.
Not as much in like the virtual side of working, that's for sure. Like I said, at least in our community at DLD Nation, like we have constant communication because we use WhatsApp, so like we're all able to talk to each other, just like regular text, basically, pretty consistently. So, and we do like we have programs in place to like make sure we stay connected with the other coaches, and it's not just like a bunch of random people working together. Like we all try to stay as tight as a community as possible, so we're all sharing like the same ideas and talking to each other. We have weekly Zoom calls and other support calls that we have that all the coaches try to hop on. So there's a lot of camaraderie that still happens, But to your point, like it is very different than like, I get to like actually physically see you, like dap you up and be like, what's up, man? Like, how was your weekend? And like have that, talk about the games this weekend. Like that stuff I'll always miss, like just bullshitting and wasting company time, talking to your friends at work. That stuff I'll always miss. Like some of the funniest things and funniest stories always result like, oh, one time at work.
Right.
Uh, Certainly you will miss those because now don't get me wrong, like I laugh all the time with Maddie. It's like we have a blast, but we're both kind of like separated for the whole day, like just in our little cubicles, if you will, here. And it's not the same like type of energy or work environment. Like when I worked at restaurants, I loved the energy that came from restaurants and like bartending. Like it was just so much. And now it's like you kind of have to create a lot of your own momentum.
I feel restaurants are such an interesting occupation because there's a lot of negativity that can come out of it. But at the same time, I feel like line cooks, like waiters, waitresses, that's also one of the most like tight niche group of people, I guess you could say, because you go through so much and an hour sometimes feels like 10 from my experience, at least. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You guys, what is it? Like commiserate in misery is what it is. Like you're just all friends because of terrible circumstances. Like working in the restaurant business, you'll see some of the craziest things. And I'll always like, since I've worked there for so long, I'll always like respect waiters and waitresses that are like busting their ass and you can tell that they're moving. But yeah, to your point, like there is some crazy toxicity that happens and it's just insane. Thankfully, like I never was really ever a part of it. I was very like, I'm just gonna make my money. Like I'll be nice and cool with everyone. I'll do my job, but I'm probably just gonna bounce. I really don't want to like. I never found myself hanging out with people after work, and it was nothing personal. It was just like I was working other jobs at the time. I had other responsibilities, and I just knew like that level of stuff always would result in like that toxicity that you mentioned.
Yeah, I remember you working a ton of jobs. You know what story Mike Panaki and I talk about all the time? That time I helped you move and you were like, guys, just please be careful. Don't hit anything. Like, just watch what you're doing. Like, literally the second you stop talking, the second you finish that sentence, I go ahead and whack a wall. Like, not seconds, like clockwork. And you're just like, did you hear anything at all that I just said? We talk about that all the time. Absolutely hilarious. That's such a great story.
I was just talking to Mike the other day. Man, I haven't seen anyone in so long. When we went up home in Rhode Island, we had such good intentions of visiting thousands of people because, I mean, you could see so many people in Rhode Island in a couple of days. But, man, those holidays, they punch you right in the dick, I'll tell you. Like, they just come in so hot.
Dude, it's tough. And I know the feeling. I wasn't even up here visiting anyone. I just had so many people in town, and I felt like every single day I was just busy and occupied. So I can't even imagine how you felt coming back and wanting to see so many people, as well as Maddie, I'm sure, wanting to see so many people as well. It must have been just super, super hectic.
I mean, thankfully, like the people we each want to see are usually the same. Like there's never like
That's good.
That like, oh dude, I really don't feel like seeing her. Like that never happens, thankfully, with us. Like we have like I like all her friends, she likes all my friends. So it's a good situation. So it's never like a drag to go see those people. It's just a lot of effort to go see those people.
Right. I hear you.
Like that time of year, everything like traffic's up, where we were staying too, we were like just 20 minutes from the highway in general, which could be an issue for Island. Yeah, it's never fun. Yeah. If you're close to
that's
the
like
highway,
a day trip.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's it really is.
I always wonder what people think when they come to Rhode Island from like say Texas or like California or something. They probably think that this is great. Everything's only 30 to 40 minutes away, like at the most. And we go out to California and the closest grocery store is like an hour and a half away.
Oh my God.
It's like,
so driving through South Carolina, like when we go home, it takes like 3.5 hours just to get out of South Carolina. And
that's
then we
crazy.
Go through North Carolina, which is like 6 hours, and then Virginia. And it's just like, it blows your mind with how big and vast other states are when you travel, especially if you road trip. And that's what we do every time is we drive back. And I'll always say like, I refuse to pay for tolls. I end up probably paying more in gas, but I'll take the long way essentially. It's just, they always stress me out because I feel like I'm never doing it the right way. So going through Pennsylvania and New York, like you go through like all like the just huge open fields and like so much land, and you're just blown away. You're like, oh wow, 10 Rhode Islands can fit in this plot of land right now.
That's funny.
It's absolutely crazy.
Anyway, let's kind of get back on topic to you here. So let's kind of start off. I want to start off with kind of some of your steroid use that you've mentioned kind of in the past, because I feel like that can help a lot of people, because especially in this day and age, not so much probably when we were growing up, but I think now with social media kind of taking on a life of its own, a lot of kids might be more tempted to do that instead of kind of playing the long game and starting from square one and working up to square 10 over the course of so many years. They might want to just essentially speed up the treadmill to speed 10 and get there as quickly as possible. So why don't you talk about that a little bit, kind of what you did, what you wish you did differently, why you decided to do it, what you used, whatever you want to disclose, go for it, my friend.
Wow, jumping right into it. Yeah, so I think that's really the mindset, and that's what I had when I was, 15, 16, 17, like within that range. And I never, well, at the time, I guess was considered heavy. It was per hormones. And that's essentially what these SARMs are now. And, most of the stuff that you get off black market behind the counter at the supplement stores, whatever it is. And, for me at the time, I wanted to put the treadmill up as fast as I could and see, how big and strong I could get, because I thought it was the best thing. I had a couple buddies doing it. They got it from their older brothers, and it just turned into this like, oh, you're doing it, oh, that's what you're taking, oh, I'm taking that too. And it became like almost like a community of a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds doing which now is essentially SARMs. That main thing that like every kid keeps doing. I don't even know enough about the stuff. After that, my original dabbling with it, I stopped. Like, I didn't want to touch this stuff anymore, because for me, I had a lot of adverse effects. I felt like shit. I gained way too much weight. I ended up gaining so much weight because I was uneducated and I didn't take the time to really understand what I was doing. I kind of just basically felt like I was taking that magic pill that was going to make everything happen for me, and I just had to wake up every day and it would do the thing. 16, 17 years old, what the hell do I know? I didn't go through any of the schooling and information that I have now. God, I wish I did. I wish I was listening to, more people talking about it, but I'm trying to be as big and strong as possible. I'm watching Ronnie Coleman videos and, getting hyped up before I go to the gym. So I didn't really care at that time because I thought I was doing everything right. You get to a point where you keep taking it, and then you have to take your off cycles, and you hate how you feel. You feel weak, you're not feeling strong, so you get back on it again, so you feel stronger, and then you start to see some of the adverse effects. For me, I had some liver issues where I was pissing brown even though I was super hydrated, and or kidney issues rather, or both. There was so many weird things. The doctors are just kind of like, yeah, whatever you're doing, stop. I was afraid to tell them what I was taking. And basically the doctor's like, well, whatever supplement you're taking, stop. And I'm like, okay. Ended up getting gyno because I never knew the proper steps to step away and get off of pro hormones properly. So that developed, which for anyone who doesn't know, it's like extra fatty tissue in your nipples, which is unfun. So any kids who are watching this, yeah, don't take the shit, yeah, dude, it's an unfortunate event for sure. Thankfully it's one of those things where it's, not the end of my life by any means. It's not a life or death situation. But ultimately, if I were to tell anyone hey, if you're going to do stuff, because eventually you're going to want to try it yourself. It's kind of like having the drug talk with your kids. It's like, hey, listen, you're probably going to do it. I wish you wouldn't. I'd love to tell you all the reasons not to, and I'll continue to tell the reasons not to, but you're probably going to do it, right? One of your friends is going to have a good experience with it and they're going to convince you to do it. So you're going to do it too. My best advice is just get as much research and as much backing as you possibly can before you pull the trigger on something like that. Like I said, I want to encourage people to not do those types of things under the guidance of professionals like your doctor, of course. And I know plenty of bodybuilders and other coaches are doing steroids nowadays. It's not like a secret. Plenty of people are on performance enhancing drugs on a fairly regular basis. I'm not saying it's good for you. Clearly, it's working, if you will, for those individuals, but a lot of them, if not all of them, are under some type of supervision of a coach or a professional. I'm not that coach, if anyone's wondering, but they're under that type of guidance. And like I said, if you're going to try it, just prepare yourself and do your due diligence. Like, don't half-ass really anything you do, but especially like this. Like, I'll never consider someone who's on steroids, who's, getting on stage looking like an absolute freak of nature. I'll never take anything away from them. Like, just because you're doing steroids, like, yeah, they're a performance enhancing drug, but like, you still have to put in a tremendous amount of work and not do the thought process that I had was, oh, I take these pills, I become super strong and lean and I don't have to worry about it.
I think the way I've always kind of looked at steroids is there's such a small percentage of people where it's actually worth them taking it.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I feel like you see people at, I don't know, LA Fitness or whatever the case may be. You see so many people taking steroids. I don't want to say so many, but more than really should. It's just not even worth it at the end of the day.
No, like I said, I wish I knew what I know now, and I wish I took some of the precautions, because I think for me, the longest negative side effect was certainly like putting on so much size so fast. I basically went from graduating high school at like 175, 185, maybe we'll call it 180, to ballooning up to almost like 265, 280 in a span of like a year and a half.
Wow.
I
That's
wanted
a lot.
I wanted to play football. So, my first year I was doing really well, but I put on a fuck ton of, like, I put on so much size that the rest, like my lower half, didn't keep up. I wasn't training the way I should have been training either. I was pretty much doing bro splits every other day, trying to bench as much as I could because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. Like, I was squatting and everything, but not athletically training, not doing the things I needed to do like I know now, and ended up tearing my ACL. And then I followed that up with another torn ACL 2 years later. So those long-term effects from, just a short period of time really doing that, I think I'm paying the consequences more from just being an idiot for a couple of years out of my life.
What was the ACL recovery like?
I'll be honest with you, man. It sucked for the first like 2 weeks, like a lot. Like, that was probably the worst. Of course, you're coming off surgery itself. It just isn't fun. Like, you're out, you wake up and your knees just feels like it's gone. And someone who like really does enjoy like being athletic and playing sports, basically being told like, you're not doing shit for 6 to 8 to 12 months, like nothing, like have fun. And leading up to that too, it sucks. I was working at GNC at the time, and leading up to that, I was talking to customers and stuff, and no one gives you any vote of confidence. Like, oh, you'll be fine, you'll bounce back, bro. Everyone's like, oh yeah, got my shit done, and I've been out for 15 years. Like, everyone's like just telling you like all the horror stories. I'm like, dude. And once again, I'm 20. So like, I'm still fairly young. Like, I don't, I'm easily impressed on things, and I'm anxious and all these different things. I don't know what to expect. So, you get the surgery, you're bummed out. Definitely had bouts of depression because I couldn't do anything. But I mean, one of the worst things was just getting up every time to go to the bathroom, all the blood rushing down to my knee. Felt like it was going to explode again. Oh, dude. Ooh. Yeah. I mean, after you got past that and, the healing process really started to kick in. Yeah. Like that first 2 weeks, I'll be honest, and listen, like, it does suck, but like, you get better, and it depends what kind of effort you put in. And I wanted to get better faster. So I took it a lot more seriously. Like, I really, pushed myself to get better and better, paid more attention to things. I ended up getting into a car accident, which sucked. That ended up like popping a stitch, which was super fun. And then one day I kind of slipped a little bit. Didn't set me back, but man, it hurt. But all said and done, I ended up getting back probably around month. I'd say I was running and cleared pretty much full speed by like month 9 or 10. So it was pretty much right in range of like a pretty speedy recovery, I would say. Um, Thankfully, like any position I played in football wasn't necessarily the most agile. Like I was D line, tight end. So like I wasn't trying to break ankles. So like the lateral movement wasn't as necessary.
Right.
My bigger concern was, just down the line. Like I'm a big dude. I don't feel like dealing with all these injuries and pain when I'm 50. That was my bigger concern there. So I lost a good amount of weight. I ended up, so post surgery, not being able to do anything, not paying attention as much to like my activity level and eating. I got up to like 320.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I put on some weight. And a lot of it I thought was, muscle again, because just not knowing enough about what I'm supposed to be doing. And then tore my ACL again, like a year and a half later. That was just someone fell into my knee and it blasted my knee open, basically. It was
Same
the
knee?
opposite. Huh?
Oh, opposite knee.
Opposite knees. Yeah. So both knees
Okay.
were down and out. Called it quits after that. Really wanted to play, but I was like, dude, I'm not a player. I guess I'll be a coach. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I am now. I lost all the weight, or most of the weight, I should say. I got down to like 240. That was for me. Like I felt good, but I was tired. Like I was in a deficit for so long. So now I sit around like 270 and I feel pretty good.
That's that's one of my biggest fears is tearing my ACL. That and my Achilles, because I've just
Oh, Achilles
heard
sounds so much worse.
that's what I mean. Like I see like that just ruins professional athletes' career. Like you take the 1% of the 1% of the human population and
Can't make it
essentially
that fast.
I don't even know how that's possible. Like I'm convinced he's a robot. Like that's insane.
That's
I
very insane.
like that's definitely the fastest recovery I've ever seen with that type of injury. It's absolutely absurd.
Him and Adrian Peterson, because Adrian Peterson tore his ACL and came back, what, like 6, 7 months later?
Yeah, he was ready for week 1 and then he had that incredible year.
Yeah, he had his 2097 year, right?
Yeah. That Russian record's going to fall now that they have the 17 games.
Yeah, I think every record's going to eventually. I mean, I think technically Trayvon Diggs came so close to breaking I think it's Dick Train or whatever his name is, Midnight Train. I can't think of his actual name. He had like 14 interceptions back in like the 70s or something. But Trayvon Diggs is so close to that.
I feel like he's not even that good. Like you see, he's given up almost over 1,000 yards this year.
Damn, I didn't even think it was that many. I keep looking at his interceptions.
That's what I mean. I was reading about him the other day, and his stats show he's given up over 1,000 yards. I'm like, he sucks. I actually feel like he's kind of slow, but hey, you know what? There's a reason I'm not an NFL scout, and I'm sitting here
I
talking to
think
you.
for him too, it's a lot of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to my friend. I feel like the Cowboys just use him really, really well to utilize his skill set to his highest ability. I don't know how good he'd be if he was somewhere else, but
I could
I
see him
guess
going safety.
I think he'd be actually a lot better at safety, believe it or not.
But
But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
yeah, I think that's another podcast you have, right?
Yeah, the Pats Pack podcast. That one's pretty fun. Like I
Yeah.
don't know what we're gonna do with that and what direction we're gonna go in with that. We're just kind of doing like game previews and game recaps right now, but we'll see. We got some fun off-season stuff planned, some like salary cap stuff, and like kind of like we'll do some draft stuff, things along those lines. I don't know. We're just gonna something I literally just kind of dreamt up, and I'm like, why not? It sounds like something fun we could do, and just kind of see what happens. But yeah.
Thanks, man. That's good. That's basically what we did with our podcast.
Yeah, the thing about podcasts, like we were talking about, sometimes they're just so hard to monetize and really get out there because there's no real algorithm for them. That's the one real issue I find with them.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to figure it out. Thankfully, we're in a place where we're happy to put in a little bit of the money because we know it helps our clients a little bit more, helps people who follow us on Instagram a little bit more. So like we're okay with, paying for the process of putting a podcast together to help out. If we end up getting, some sponsors and some ways to make a little extra dough, awesome. Like I'd be happy if we just broke even. I think I'd be pumped about that. I don't expect to make money off of this stuff. It'd be nice, but I've reached out to like a bunch of. It's kind of one of those things where you just reach out to as many places as you can and be like, hey, what do you think? I probably reached out to like 10 different places and people to like get on our podcast. Maddie got lucky with getting Jordan Syatt. We'll have him on our podcast next year or
There
this
you go.
this year in June, end of June.
That's crazy. They booked that far out in advance.
He made a post saying that he'd be on anyone's podcast anytime, like no matter what. And he got booked out like so fast. So I think
sounds like it.
right before I think it's like right before or on my birthday, we have an episode with him, which would be pretty cool. I mean, the guy is awesome, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah, hopefully we get some more guests and everything. We'll have to have you on and give us a little bit more in depth on finance. But
anytime, man.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, like you said, it's you want to make money, but it's just there's no exact recipe yet to make money.
All right, so kind of going on to the healthier side of fitness, I guess we could say, as opposed to the steroid side. So talk about, you got your CSCS, right? You are a CSCS.
Yeah.
So talk a little about that process, because I've had some friends that have tried to go through it and they've really struggled with it. So kind of talk about that, how long that took, like the time frame behind it, what exactly it is, what you can do with it now. Kind of take it away with that.
It's the most daunting thing I've ever done.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah, I wish I could try to paint a pretty picture. It's going to be different for everyone. Like I'll tell you right now, like school is just not something I was awesome at. I tried sometimes in high school, but I definitely got by like just being like, I guess like the funny kid that teachers didn't really feel like dealing with again. So it didn't really good into like study habits and learning the material and absorbing the material. Like for me, I always just learned better by physically doing it, failing at it, figuring out how to do it the right way, and then just perfecting it once it's the right way. So I've always had to apply myself that way. So, I mean, going through it now, I did an online certification through ISSA. So it's probably a little bit different than someone going to college to get their CSCS. I know there's a little bit of confusion sometimes with that one. So mine's probably not as in depth as you would go to like a school for, if that makes sense. Okay. So don't get me wrong, it still sucked. It was absolutely daunting because for me, a lot of the information was just kind of read and react. So like you have to read it all, be able to decipher it all. At least this is once again like the online world now. You have sometimes you have like tutorials or Zooms and opportunities to learn a little bit more, but the information that's in so many of these courses to nowadays, depending what you're going for, it's not as applicable as you wish it would be. Like so many of my clients don't need to know the in-depths and ins and outs of how to do an overhead squat. Like that's just not the clientele I have. Right. Now, sure, if I was working with athletes and, I need to make sure that their power output's good for, and they're really pushing extra for power cleans and, squat depth and all these different things, right? And making sure their mechanics are all in an ideal spot to translate over into the football field. Awesome. And for me, that was like a goal I had. I wanted to be like a strength and conditioning coach for a high school team, work my way up through the ranks and do the whole thing. Way longer process than I thought it would ever be. Like so much more work that you have to do than you think you would ever have to do. And, having that certification was awesome. It definitely put me in a good position. It took me probably about a little over a year, just about a year to get, like going through the online course because it was just that much material. And like I said, so much of the material, I can't even confidently say that I use 5% of it.
Wow, really? 5% for a year time.
It sucks to say that like confidently, but so much, like NASM's like that, so many of these other courses. And I hope they start to change their structure, but so much of it is how much science can we throw at you, but not put it into any way of applying it to the people you're going to be working with.
Mm-hmm.
Because not like to your point, like you mentioned with the steroids, like there's a very small amount of people, like a 1% amount of people who actually need that level of training or certification. And for me, I, was lucky enough to be in a situation where the clientele I get to work with is general population, right? Like I get to work with, regular moms and dads and your brothers and sisters, like just normal people. And you can relate to them more by showing them and teaching them things. Like, of course, I always want to educate my clients, but I want them to feel confident in the education. Like, I don't want to try to say something so scientific so I sound like the super smart guy in the room. Like, I don't need to be the smartest guy in the room at all. I just need you to understand the information I'm trying to provide for you. That's what I care about. Like, it's, for some people, it's a pride thing. Like, at the end of the day, I couldn't care less if there was letters after my name. Like, it's a couple letters, at the end of the day. So as long as like my clients are like, no, I understand everything Spencer teaches me, that's all I care about.
Do you think it was worth getting?
No,
You wouldn't go back and get it again?
probably not, unless there was like ways where they offered more of like an applied practice to it. Like, how can we take this information and actually utilize it more consistently? So much of it was just, like I said, like, basically you could just do everything off of a flashcard. It's like, if you can remember this information, you're going to be fine. Like, you're going to be able to pass the course, but it's just so much information to try to remember to then answer the questions.
Do you think it would be different if it was one that you had to go to school for as opposed to just the one online?
Yeah, if I went to school, because once again, if you're going to a place, you're going to be more inclined to complete
Mm-hmm.
it. Being at home, it is difficult to say, hey, I'm going to study for this amount of time. Hey, I'm going to sit down and learn for this amount of time. So coming from a place where like I didn't have good study habits, it made it significantly harder for me to go through it. Like that was a me thing. So like I didn't find it worth it because it was just, for me, a lot of times it was demoralizing, like trying to do all this stuff. I was like, dude, I don't fucking know. Like, damn, this is hard. Damn, this is hard. Like, it was difficult. And a lot of times, like, I felt the pressure of going into the test. It was one of those tests where like, your camera's on, they're watching you, and it's a little sketchy. And, you're just like, pressure just hits you. And dude, it's not anything to laugh at. So any of your friends who are taking it and they complete it, like, kudos to them, especially for going to school. But if I went to school, I don't think it would have been easier, but I think being able to immediately raise my hand and ask a question of how I can apply this, or like help me understand it better, I think would have been beneficial for me.
Do you think, or let me rephrase that. What, how long did you have in between, I guess, sections, you could say? Like, how many sections were there, and how long did it take to complete each section? Because you said it took a whole year, and from the way it sounds, they didn't just say, okay, here's 12 sections, complete them at your own pace. It sounds like you had to keep, like, in line with each section and keep up to date with everything. So how long was each sector, for lack of a better term?
No, so it was basically like a almost in a sense like an open book test in a way. Like, you could bounce around the sections if you wanted to, but it just didn't make sense to bounce around them because each one kind of followed into each other. I'd say the first four chapters were easily the longest. And like I said before, a lot of the why it took me so long was because it wasn't as structured as I would be if I was going to a school.
Okay.
It's so much easier for me to be like, I'm home, I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Like, and this, before I was working for the company I'm with now, I was working other jobs. So I was, GNC, I was working, when I came down here, I was working at Publix. So like I was working all these different jobs while trying to do that. So it became like a task, and then not just a regular task, a difficult task.
Gotcha.
But each section, I'd say, especially the first four chapters took forever. Like I felt like they were never going to end.
Really?
I really did. because it was mostly anatomy, it was terminology, all the different things you need to know, like going into it. But it was just so like exhausting the amount of information they give that once again, like just you never find yourself needing to use for me, like same thing with high school, like how much, and this is coming from a person who just didn't excel in high school. So maybe I'm, speaking from a poor place, but I feel like a lot of the stuff in high school just isn't applicable, right? Like you just can't use it anywhere. Like I don't use algebra anywhere.
See, I go back and forth on that because naturally I agree with you. I think most of the stuff that is taught in high school is pretty much irrelevant. Like, okay, like there's not too many jobs out there that are going to take 10 points off your job application if you miss a comma or a period in one place. And if they do, I probably don't want to work there personally. But along the same times, and I've realized this, or I've thought about this more recently, when you're younger, you can just learn a little bit better. So I think it's almost not a bad idea to have those boring subjects because you get a little bit of more of a generalized background and you can latch on to things easier and find almost an area of study that you might like a little bit more because you can just afford to take in different information from all those wide range of subjects at once, or at least that's the way I think about it. But at the same time, going back to my initial point, I do agree with you. Like, there's tons of things that aren't taught in schools that can help kids on an exponential level, like taxes, for example. Like just one basic thing. There's like 100 different things. Maybe how to find something you're passionate about and turn it into something you can monetize. That's another thing. There's hundreds of thousands of things we can sit here and talk about that aren't taught in schools. But at the same time, I don't disagree, but I don't agree either. I'm just kind of like in the middle right now. I'm like, if anything, I would make a change the more I learn about it because I think half the stuff is pointless. Like, but also maybe that's just because I'm not interested in half that stuff personally.
I think you hit the nail on the head because for me, I wasn't interested in a lot of those things. Like I found for me, I found no value. And as like I said, as I look at certain things, I don't see how, testing a kid on how much history he can remember that you don't need necessarily. Like, sure, it's good to know like where things come from and how things operate and like how we got to where we are today. But like, I think it's unfair to, grade a kid on a subject that they probably don't care enough about. Like driving kids, like it's so funny. When I was in school, I don't know how much of an age gap we have. I know we got a couple years.
I'm 25.
But okay, so I got 5 years. So when I was in high school, the VOTEC, did you have that
Yes.
At your school? Okay. Those in our heads were like the bum loser kids for some reason. I don't know why that became the thought process. Oh, these kids are going to be too dumb to go to college. They're never going to go to college, so that's why they're going to find trades. I wish I was in those classes. Like, oh my God, I kick myself in the ass so hard all the time because I didn't go to college. I had to do everything the hard way. Not to say like that those kids weren't doing it the hard way, but they learned tools and trades that are going to help them forever. Like forever. Like they found the version of school that I needed. And I didn't know that I needed that.
And the thing about those things is even if you decide to pivot your career path a little bit and ultimately decide to go in a different direction, a lot of those things you can still use around your house on a day-to-day basis.
I don't like having to call the maintenance guy. Like, thankfully, like, my dad taught me a good amount of stuff because he was a contractor for 20 some odd years. And I'm surprised he never pushed like going to those classes onto me. But once again, there was that stigma of like, no, those are like the dirty kids for some reason. Even though like I know all those kids now as adults, they're all great humans. They all have great jobs, like secure jobs. Sure. Do they have to bust their ass for their jobs? Absolutely. But they're all making good money. They're all happy human beings, right? Like it's just, it's baffling. And those, like you said, you're going to be able to use those at any part of your life.
It's so funny as you get older how you look back to when you were younger and all those stereotypical things were just the dumbest things you could have ever imagined. And you don't even know where they came from. They were just ideas in your head, and you're just kind of like, why was I like that? Like, that was just flat out stupid at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's the personalities of people, like you just absorb all the different information. I can't even imagine kids nowadays, every kid in high school has a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone until I was like a junior in high school. So every kid's got a cell phone. Every kid's got social media, especially TikTok or Instagram. They're learning all these different trends. They're seeing all these different, ways to act and ways to be and what to love and what to hate. And it's creating, their mindset throughout high school. It's the same way it affected us, but ours, just was a little bit different, I guess. It's, history repeats itself essentially. And I think kids nowadays are going to be looking back and be like, just blown away.
I'm very scared for this up and coming generation, this generation that's in high school right now, because social media is such a big part of their life, and I just feel it's going to negatively impact it a lot going forward, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, look at the increase. I mean, there's positives that have come from it, and of course, like the negatives. Like, I think nowadays more people are open to speaking about like anxiety and depression and mental illness, and I think that's amazing, right? Like, I think that's huge, and I think that's something that the generations before us really like didn't want to talk about, and they probably thought that we were crazy for even mentioning it, or starting to go to therapy. And now we're looking at these kids like they're going to be crazy, but in a sense, like, they definitely opened up a door of talking about anxiety. Now, do I believe that the overall amount of social media and exposure they have to social media is creating a lot of that anxiety and depression? Absolutely, right? Like, I think it's like a double-edged sword, where it's like there's something good that came out of this with the awareness of anxiety and depression and mental illness overall, which is fantastic, right? Now we can hopefully address it as like a community, as a team. We can kind of help others and everything. But at the same time, social media, I think, is what created that for so many of these kids. And I'm hoping, down the line, all these kids can understand like social media is not real life. It really isn't. Like, the amount of stuff that you see on there is all highlight reels. So it's just like constant overstimulating of just amplified exposure. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much. So to your point, like, it is going to be scary. And their social interactions, I think, are all through social media right now, which is so funny to think. There's no like, I mean, even technically, like, right now, this is still over the internet. You know what I mean? Like, we're not in person with each other. Like, back to our original thing of like working in brick and mortars, like having that social interaction is so different.
Right.
It's so different. And I feel like that's not going to happen as much anymore.
Like, I'm a little torn with the whole idea, because social media definitely does do some good. Like, for example, you and I we don't talk on a daily basis, but if you post a picture of you out in LA, I can be like, oh, how was it? Where'd you go? Like, kind of, catch up rather quickly and be like, all right, man, sweet, like, enjoy. And it's not like I had to, I don't want to say go out of my way, but call you on the phone or get in touch with you to do that. I just saw it and we had a quick conversation. And then it's also good to catch up with people, I guess, along the same lines you don't talk to as much. You see someone that got married, you see someone that had kids or something like that. Like, you still feel like you're involved in their life. And when you do see them in person again, you can say, oh, I saw you had a kid. How is he or she doing? Oh, I saw you got married. How's the wife? Like, that is positive. On the same time, like you said, I feel like it causes a lot of anxiety and depression. And I feel like it's really, really bad for your attention span. I feel like it's really, really bad for productivity. I feel like people look for distractions on social media. And
Oh, for sure.
I feel like it just honestly does a lot more harm than good, even though I think it does do a lot of good as well. And it really takes you away, at least the way I look at it, from the present moment. Like, I was hanging out with someone last week and legitimately they were on social media the entire time. And I was just like, should I just leave? That's what I felt like saying. I'm like, should I just get up and go home? Because this is A, rude, B, annoying, and C, frustrating.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why, me and I have a really good agreement. We both work on our phones, and we both have to use social media to promote our jobs. Like, we can't get away from it. That's our job. Right. So we know we're going to be doing that for 8, maybe even longer hours a day. And we love that. That's like, we love our job. We would trade it for the world. But at the end of the day, when it's time for dinner and we're chilling, like, we put our phones like away. When it's time for bed, we put our phones away, and we really try to set that principle of like, hey, we're not going to mindlessly scroll for an hour and a half and just waste time. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've incorporated more so over the past like 6 to 8 months, basically since we both started working for this company. She started working a little bit before me, but you realize like when you're got a bunch of clients, you got work to do, it's unreal how much time people actually spend mindlessly going through social media, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube. They all have like those ways of just staying in this constant carousel of information, or bright colors and sounds or memes, whatever it is. Like all these platforms have that rolling, like that Rolodex of just nonstop and stuff going to you. So it's so easy to just sit there and like lose an hour of your day to nothing.
Right. You said the name of the company you work for is DLD Nation?
Correct.
So talk about that company. What is it? How did it get started? Kind of whatever you want to share about that. Go into a little bit of detail about that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to do like the startup as much justice
as much as you know.
Like, but yeah, our owner, CEO, Dela, she's awesome. If anyone's listening, want to check them out. Dela Loves Dumbbells is her handle at Dela Loves
Dumbbells. I like that. That's creative.
Yeah, well, that's also how she got the name Nation.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah. So really, I think it's awesome, and it just stuck, and I think it's fantastic. But yeah, she was a nurse, I want to say, like a full-time nurse for a while, and she was doing the fitness thing just like so many of us started off doing, and she started to build a bit of an empire. Her husband, I don't know if they're husband at the time, but husband, Sean, one of my like favorite role models, obviously he started helping out, and they started recruiting their friends, and started to really build a phenomenal business. And then in November of 2020, Maddie got hired to work for them, while she was actually doing her own business for a while. Same general concept, online coaching. And she applied to work for them because for her, she didn't want to wear all the hats. It's so many different hats. I mean, you get it. Like, I think you do everything for your own podcast. Right?
Yeah, it's a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah. So now, like running a business. Okay. So as a coach, you're doing the sales calls, you're DMing outreach, you're doing content, you're trying to have these Zoom calls where you're selling to people. Dude, that sucks. Like, that's not easy, and then you're trying to negotiate pricing, or handle pushback on pricing, all these different things. And then of course you're writing the programs, coaching them, dealing with their ups and downs, their check-ins, all those different things. So that's a lot of work to put into one person's lap. So when Maddie applied, she was welcomed with wide open arms because they're really excited to have her, which is great. She was doing that. She was loving it. I was still working for GNC and the bartending job. We ended up moving down to South Carolina. I was helping at the time before she went off to work with Dallas, helping her with her programming, just writing workouts for her clients. And I had a couple of my clients from when I was training, even though the gym's closed, like I was still writing workouts for them because they had home equipment and whatnot. And then thankfully DLD was like, hey, we need a male coach. We also need someone to help with programming. You interested? And I was like, yeah, very interested. Like a lot. And it was to the point where like they were going to hire me as just a part-time coach, just help with programming. Like I didn't think I was going to be doing a lot for them. So I didn't like necessarily know what to expect in terms of like compensation yet, but I just didn't care. I didn't want to I was working at Publix. I got a short stint with Publix, the grocery chain down here, and I quit. I called them. I was like, yeah, my dream job just called. I'm out. Yeah, I'd never done that, but it felt good to do that because they didn't care. They're like, who's this? I'm like, great.
Who's this?
See you later.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, I came on as a part-time capacity. I wasn't even helping with programming yet. They were just giving me a couple clients and then kind of like put me through all the different procedures and whatnot. And before I knew it, I became one of the lead programmers, and I have one of the highest client rosters, which is awesome. I became full time relatively quick, which is really really cool. And like I said, I would not trade it for the
That's
world.
sick. How many clients do you have?
It varies. I'm lucky enough to have anywhere between, depending on the year, like 80 to 90 clients.
Now, how does client distribution work? Is that something where they reach out to you and say, I want you to coach me? Or do they apply and then, what'd you say her name was? Deandra? Dayla. I
Dayla.
was not even close. Dayla kind of picks the coach she thinks would be the best fit, or do they have someone that organizes that on their side, or how does that whole thing work?
Well, as far as I know, to this day, Dayla is still actually assigning clients to coaches who she thinks is the best fit, which I think is awesome because we have served well over at this point, like I think 4,000 different clients.
Oh wow.
And she is, yeah, and she's, as far as I know, to this point in time, I think it's uh, January 7th. There we go. She is she goes over the client's intake form, all the information, and she decides, who they'll team up with the best if they don't have a preference, right? So that's one layer of it, which I think is really really awesome, and it shows like how like committed she is to making sure like client experience is as best as possible. So there's that layer. Then there's also like client has a preferred coach. Like I've had people come across my Instagram because of my reels and being like, I want to work with that dude. Like, let me work with Spencer. And it's cool where they'll be like, hey, this guy wants to work with you, or this woman wants to work with you. Like, do you have the space to take them on? If so, great. Okay, awesome. Like that's my client. And then obviously there's other times where people reach out in my DMs, ask me a couple questions, and I suck at selling. Even though I worked at GNC for years, but I'm good at relationships. I'm good at building just camaraderie and just shooting the shit with people where they just want to work with me because of my personality and like who they're gonna get, right? And I couldn't be happier about that. So a lot of times I'm just having these conversations with people and they're like, hey, how much are your coaching services? And I'll send over my information. They'll apply. And then we have a team that actually like reaches out. They have like actual Zoom calls and conversations so they could talk about like customizable pricing that's going to fit for you. Right. So like not everyone has to follow, like there's no exact structure of pay, right? Like not everyone, but we want to make sure like the finances aren't what's going to stop you from signing
Gotcha.
up. And that's so much of the time. It's like, I can't afford this. Well, it's important for your health. So like, how can we help you afford this?
Right.
Right. So that's jobs that I think we really do a really good job of making sure like that's an eliminated excuse for clients, which I think is awesome. But they go through a whole process to make sure like they're in a good spot to be with a coach, like they go through all the different information, questionnaire notes, and then the process itself of like getting them onboarded is fairly fun. We do a really like customizable, personalized process, which I think sets us apart a lot. I've done online coaching, especially like training apps, and other than like height and weight, there's not a lot of whole customized personability to it when you do those types of things. So I think for us, it's really cool to go like above and beyond, take in so many different factors of their life, not just like their height and weight, but their stress levels. Are you a parent? Like people don't realize how stressful it is to be a parent nowadays. How often are you working out? What are your current eating habits? Like we go in depth with that information so we can make sure we're starting them where they're at and helping them guide to where they want to go.
I think that's so awesome though that they work with people, especially on the financial level, because not just in fitness, but really any program, whether it's financially or whatever the case may be, that stops a lot of people because they're like, okay, I can either, pay for this service or I can eat. It's like, it's going to be one or the other. So I think that's actually really cool and intriguing that they're like, okay, well, the money's not important. The important thing is we get you the help you want and the services that you need at the end of the day. And I feel like if more companies and services had that mindset and were like that, you'd probably see a lot more people trying different things and trying healthier things. And I think this also, one of the things I always compare it to is just food in general, because some people say, okay, it's it can be expensive to eat healthy sometimes, to buy all the right foods and to make sure you're eating enough nutrients and getting all the right, I guess, nutrients, again, for lack of a better term, in your body. Or I can just go to McDonald's and pay $1 for a meal. So I think that's really awesome that they do that.
No, it's definitely one of my favorite things. I mean, even when it comes time to like clients renewing, like, I really don't know if I can afford it right now. Hey, we're gonna send this over to our admin team, see if they can help us out a little bit. Like, at the very least, we'll put the effort in to make it work. We're not gonna set ourselves up to where we're losing money on these clients, but of course, at the same time, we got to run a business. At the end of the day, I think everyone can understand that. We of course care about you. I've seen I've seen Dela like make some crazy deals and exemptions for people just because like she wants to make sure their health gets in a good place, which is awesome, right? Like we try to make us as human as possible at all times, and I think that's what's going to kind of set us apart from a lot of these other places. We really do our best to make sure no client just feels like a number or like a data point. They're an actual human being. I try to like make sure I know all my clients' names. Like we try to, especially like the way like we're asked to take our notes, we want to make sure like we know about them. Like I'll bring up a client's kids, like, hey, how's Betty and Susie? You know what I mean? But like little things like that, where clients feel like they're really connected with your coach, and they feel like, hey, this is something I truly enjoy. Because dude, working out sucks sometimes. Eating healthy sucks sometimes. Paying attention to your water, your sleep, your movement, like all those things. Like sometimes it can suck. Like I wish I had a better term, but like it is what it is, right? I think our brains are designed to want to be challenged, but man, dude, they like to just chill and do nothing. It's so satisfying. I mean, like the foods we eat sometimes that are so tasty, and the TV that we watch, it's so delicious to watch. I mean, come on, who doesn't enjoy that, right? So sometimes it can be a challenge to go through those things. And I think it's easier to go through those things with a friend instead of a boss.
Oh, completely. And it can be a lot harder depending on the situation you're in. Because if I live in a house with 6 people who are meal prepping, working out all the time, I'm going to be I'm probably not even going to think twice about it. It's just going to be how I live. But if I live in a house with 6 people and they're like, drinking a couple of beers after work, they're getting pizza 2-3 nights a week, they like to go out, it's going to be a lot harder to, I guess, go against the grain and be, I don't want to say more responsible, but have that almost tunnel vision and just stay on point with what you really want when you have all those temptations in the way.
Exactly. And that's the big social dilemma that we have, the fear of missing out, right? Like, you're more inclined to pass up on your quote unquote like healthy dinner to have a couple beers and, hang out with your friends, right? Like at the end of the day, like it's going to be easier to want to choose that. And to your point, like sometimes you have to kind of have that tunnel vision, but that's just how the social standards are nowadays. Like you're weird for caring about your health. You're weird for not wanting to have beer, or not have pizza. It's not that like you don't necessarily want it ever again. It's just like, hey, I have a particular goal that I want to achieve, and it's probably only going to take me like realistically 8 months to a year to achieve a dream physique. Let's say we're in a good, healthy starting place. Probably like if you were to just bust your ass for 8 months to a year, some fucking incredible things can happen. But what sucks is you get all these different, chirps in all these different areas of your life, family, friends, coworkers, just chirping at you, kind of questioning your process. And it gets hard to stay tunnel vision when you have people just knocking you around, being like, oh, come on, bro. You can have one beer. It's not going to kill you. Oh, you can have that piece of cake. It's like, no, it's not. But like, I don't want to. And it's crazy. And, you said like, if you had 6 people living you who are eating, healthy, if you will, then you're probably gonna be more inclined to do that. They always say like the 5 people you spend the time most with is what you're going to be like. So like you're going to be a product of your environment. And if your environment sucks, well, it's going to be very hard to work through that environment.
And then some people get what I like to call tomorrow syndrome. And it's almost like 51st dates where they're just like, I'll start
Yep.
again tomorrow. Oh, I'll start again tomorrow. And before you know it, 2 weeks have gone by and it's still tomorrow and you're way behind.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's why I always tell people like just do your best to not miss twice. Like we're bound to slip up, we're bound to trip, we're bound to make a mistake, and that's fine. Use it as an opportunity to learn, right? Like you don't have to make the same mistake 2 days in a row. Like I mentioned before, I like to fail, figure it out, and do it right before I continue. So like you'll never see me typically making the same mistake
Hmm.
twice.
Talk to me talk to me a little bit about how you design a program for someone, both like lifting related and just macro related.
So it depends. I'll start with the macro side of it because I feel like that's where most people struggle. So many people are down to work out. Like I think for a lot of people, that's the fun stuff to do. And out of the two, working out's more of the fun stuff. People on average, hate tracking macros. It's
Yeah.
just that's a rude awakening. Like, fuck, I mean, that much, or I'm not eating enough at all, which a lot more than you think. But when it comes to macros, I mean, it boils down to just understanding the client themselves, kind of understanding a little bit of their history, or if you can, a lot of their history, because that's going to help you understand some cues that you want to watch out for, right? Like a lot of people nowadays, they're on one of two ends, diet culture in some extreme fashion, to where they're trying all these different trends and different diets, and they've put themselves in some crazy positions with their health. And then there's people who just have naturally gotten through their whole life, eating the same stuff every single day, no crazy trends or anything like that. And they're in a fairly healthy position. Like they're just kind of nonchalantly entered health, right? And now you just have to tweak some of those things for them, and they're gonna look, feel, and be awesome, right? So once we understand kind of a little bit more about the client, other than just your basic stuff, height, weight, age, male, female, things like that, we go in more depth of like, dude, what have you been eating for the past 6 months? What have you done the past 6 months with those eating habits? What's your week look like on a daily average? Like I've challenged clients to send over their screenshots of like a dream day of eating or a standard day of eating, so we kind of get an idea. And it helps us when we calculate out the macros, it helps us start them where they're at, and then depending what goal they have, we can kind of help them. So if someone's clearly in a position for fat loss, I feel comfortable putting them in a deficit, for the most part, if all things check out. If someone's been under eating their whole life, and they've been probably averaging 12 to 1500 calories for God knows how long, I can't put you in a deficit. What, I'm going to put you 800 calories? That sounds miserable, right?
Yeah.
Like who wants to do? So, we start, that's like, all right, hey, we're going to start you here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to build your calories up, where, it's called reverse dieting. So we're going to build those calories back up for you. And believe it or not, so many people, like, you can gain weight, of course, during that process. So many people gain more energy, more muscle. Some people can even lose fat. It's crazy what you can do by increasing your calories. And ultimately, this is how I always like to paint the picture. You're optimizing your body, right? Like your body has an optimal calorie intake that it wants to be at regularly. Your body's resilient. Like your body will manage on 1200 calories. It'll shut other shit down. Like it'll be like, hey, guess what? We're not really going to be growing our nails or our hair much anymore because we want to make sure our organs keep going because you're not getting enough food. We're probably going to mess with, and this is all too common but for males and females, like we're going to mess with your hormones. Like, guess what? You're not getting your period for a while. Or, hey, guess what? Your testosterone levels are going to suck and you're not going to have an erection for a while because you've been under eating for so long. Like so many crazy things can happen when we under optimize our body. So, depending where that client's at, the macros can vary, but no matter what, we're putting that client in a position to where these macros are going to help them get closer and closer to their goal. Mm-hmm. To their goal. And we're adjusting macros as needed throughout the journey, right? Like no one's getting this cookie cutter set of macros to where it's like, hey, you're going to hit these macros every single day for the rest of our time working together. Like they're always subject to change a little bit, depending on eating styles, depending on preferences, depending on kind of just their routines. Like we try to really be as customizable for each client as possible. And then I don't know if you had anything to say to that.
No, keep going.
All right, cool. So then the programming side of it, that's my personal favorite side of it. Now, um, with the amount of clients that we actually, serve as a lead programmer, I can't make every single program to an individual person in the sense of like, we don't do, Mike was my first ever coach. So like we don't do powerlifting percentages and things like that. We work out of RIR more than anything else. So um, when building out a program, I have skeletons. I have like 3-day programs, 4-day programs, 5-day programs, and then they all vary based off of equipment. I have gym routines, I have barbell dumbbell routines, I have dumbbell only routines, body weight only routines, banded routines. So I have this plethora, like this tree, if you will, of programs that I can utilize. And then as I pick what I would guess to be the best pick for that client. So like say this client's intermediate, like they're pretty standard person. They've have experience in the gym. They have full gym access. I can give them like 4-day gym split. And I'm confident that through our conversation, I can make adjustments accordingly, right? Like, all right, I can fix that because you have a knee problem. We don't want to do much knee flexion, or you have some lower back issues. We're going to do stuff that's going to make sure we don't make those back issues worse and hopefully improve those back issues. Oh, okay, you're lacking on your bench press. I can go in and edit to make more bench press focused, right? Where as a lot of programs that I've done in the past, and I'm not trying to like shit on any other companies by any means, but a lot of them are very like standard. Like you can't make adjustments to that client. It's like, hey, here's the program, do what the program says, and that's it. And like if you're going to make a modification, it's just on your own. Whereas for us, like I can make a modification for any of my clients at any given time.
It sounds so interesting, but it also sounds so detail oriented in a way. Have you ever written out on either side, either the macro side or the lifting side, an entire program, and you can just tell that the client's lying to you? You can just tell he or she's not following it.
Oh yeah. I mean, like the thing is, this is a phrase that I always use, is success leaves clues, right? So the people who have been successful in their life with anything, right? Whether it be through fitness and health, through podcasts, business, being doctor, being a parent, like anyone who's done a successful job at that, they've left clues along the way to is how it worked, right? So the same thing with fitness, health. There's generalized rules that really do apply to everyone, right? So, and once again, like anyone who's listening, this is a like standardized rule. If you are a healthy individual and you are put into a calorie deficit and you are sticking to those calories, you will lose weight. What happens so often is people don't stick to them. They don't track everything. They're not as honest. I call it underreporting, or are you under eating? And a lot of times it's they're underreporting, and that's okay. Like I'm not going to sit here and judge you. Do you know how often I've underreported? You know how often I don't nail my macros? Like I'm human. I get it. But the problem is there's this weird barrier of the client wants to tell you the truth because they know it'll help them, but then they're so embarrassed because they think I care enough to judge them or shame them or be mean to them. Like that's not my style of coaching. That's none of our styles of coaching. Like I'm never like if someone sends me like a check-in that, they would deem not good, I'm not going to bust their balls about it. Like I'm not going to sit here and try to kick you while you're clearly already down, right? Like these are opportunities to learn. So I know when clients aren't putting in the effort, and as a coach, it can be challenging to challenge that client on their effort, and I think that's probably where the biggest obstacle comes is in the online world, is challenging that client because I'm not in your face, right? Like I'm not next to you watching you work out. We get form videos, but I can't always tell the exact intensity you're putting in on the 2-minute clip you send me of your squat, right? Like you're sending me 2 reps sometimes, like show me the whole set, that's another thing. Sometimes when they send in their data points, they're incomplete. It's like, hey, if your data points are incomplete, I can tell you that your effort's incomplete as well too. You get clients who submit check-ins late. And here's the thing. I'll always like play it from both sides. Like I understand other human, like this is my only job. My job is to literally wait for your check-in. Like I'm sitting here, like Where's that check-in? I'm waiting for it, right? Like I have a schedule. I know when they're supposed to check in. Like that's my job. Other people, I'm probably like the 10th priority on their list, maybe even lower, that they give a shit about that day, right? Like they got work, they got finances, they got car troubles, they got kids, they're sick, whatever it might be. All these other priorities, I'm probably the last thing they care about, not in a bad way, but like I'm not top of mind. So like I understand if, when they send their data points over, they're not 100%. And that's why you kind of have to take that human side of like, hey, I understand, like I get it, right? Like it's not easy doing these things, and you have to try to like slowly guide them through having their own revelations, having them kind of have that honest conversation with themselves through the check-in responses of like, hey, I see you're frustrated throughout this check-in, but always try to remember the term. We can never be upset with the results we didn't get with the work we didn't do. And that one always hits like so nicely to people, because they're like, fuck, you're right. I'm actually not working that hard, because if I was working that hard, I'd probably see the results, because it would show.
Do you ever find it's a little more difficult within, I guess, yourself on how to motivate different clients? Because some people respond differently. Some people might respond to like, hey, jackass, you suck. And like almost like that, I don't want to say Tom Brady mentality, but they like to be put down because it raises them up.
Tough love.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably a better way to put it. And then some people, you could say that to them and they would just go cry and not want anything to do with you.
So that certainly is a challenge. And I will say this, being a male coach, the only male coach other than the owner's husband, he's also a coach, but he's slowly we're stepping away from coaching. He's doing other ventures, like he's writing a book and he does a lot of life coaching. So I was taking over as like the main male head coach in a very female dominant company and community, right? And I loved it. I thought it was awesome. Like I will say this, from working with majority of men my whole life in every other job I've done, and it sounds funny to say this, but like feeling like one of the smarter, more competent people in that class, and now being with a bunch of women, it's incredible how much smarter they are than me. Like not a bad, it's so impressive. Like I feel sometimes like the dumb kid in class, because they are all so like intelligent, ambitious, and hardworking. And the difference of like support and like it's just working from both different areas. It's so impressive. So like I've seen myself change in a really positive way with like how I learn and how I challenge myself, because for me, I felt so much easier because like I enjoyed working, and like working at GNC, like people didn't like to work. They didn't like to work hard. So it was easy for me to climb the ladder. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, everyone, like all of them like to work hard. All of them like to challenge themselves. So it's like, we're all sprinting to the finish line or sprinting to the next level, and they're fucking fast. Like that's the best way I can really explain it, right? Like they're just all studs, and it's awesome. So being a male coach in a heavily female dominated community is awesome. But at the same time, I was worried of like, am I going to be able to be compassionate enough or have that, softer side, if you will, if things get tough, right? Like if I have to show tough love. But then over time, I'm like, dude, I'm not a mean person. Like I don't have that like bark at you attitude, because I've been like down. I've been depressed. I've been in a position where I hated my body. I've been in a position where like I felt like I couldn't do anything right. I've been in a position where like I showed up late to responsibilities like having a coach, or, I half-ass certain things. Like I've been all those negative things that my clients think they are at all times. Right. So for me to sit there and like bash on a client isn't going to be effective, even though like some clients say they want tough love. Like I've had that message, like, I think I need tough love. I'm like, dog, what's me yelling at you going to do? In all reality, what you did. Like it's no secret. Like you just didn't do what you're supposed to do. So for me, and really all of us, instead of the tough love side of it, like we'll bust chops, or like, hey, you're better than that. Like, you can do this. Like we'll motivate, but we also try to educate. Like I think when people understand the why behind certain things, like why we're doing this, it helps them grasp and make it easier for them to want to do. because they understand why they're doing it. I think so often a lot of us just tell people to do stuff, like do it because this is the right thing and I told you so, or you know, I said so. Whereas there's like this level of defiance that they're like just because you told me so doesn't mean like I should do it, you know? So educating the client on why they need to do it and educating them on the why for them to understand, right? Like them to really grasp and handle. So when they receive that information, they're like, oh, okay. And you'll start to see them really pick it up more and more. So tough love's never been effective, at least not for me. I'm sure it works for a number of coaches. I always tell myself, like, I feel like I would do well with someone just being like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, be better. Like if I had a coach, like that's how I feel like I would need to be talked to. But I think there's a lot more to be said about just the positivity, the positive affirmations, and just being kinder. I think there's a lot more benefits behind that, and especially long-term success.
I think it takes a special type of person to really, I guess, respond well to tough love. I feel like the majority of people would not respond well to that at all.
At least in the general population that I deal with, I've yet to see it, you know, and I work with multiple people in the military, police force. I have a couple firefighters on my team. I have other coaches. I have a good mix of male and female, all of which respond so much more positive to that positive interaction and that affirmation and that hype and that education, instead of me just kicking them while they're clearly down. Like, I make it a point that if I see a check-in where my client's down, I'm trying to bring an ignorant amount of energy, like to where they're like, fuck, this guy's always so up. What? Oh, God, fine. I'm in a good mood.
I just want to shut him up.
Right. And like, yeah, you know, and my favorite thing is to get those messages back after feedback. And they're like, dude, thank you so much. Like, I needed to hear that. You know, you're right. Like, I gotta push harder. And like, by motivating them and like hyping them up and, you know, letting them know that you don't need to be perfect. Like, fuck, like, that shit's hard. Who wants to be perfect? That's exhausting, right? You know, and showing them like the human side of things, it makes them feel as like they're understood, they're heard, they're seen, they're appreciated. Like, there's layers to coaching that I think a lot of people don't invest enough time in understanding. And there's phenomenal coaches out there. I'm not saying that there isn't, but you know, I think in the commercial setting, you don't get the same type of interaction, you know, as in-person training. And that's coming from someone who's done the experience of in-person and online. And I think online offers you such a more in-depth level of communication. You know, you can reach out more, you can conversate more, you have those check-ins. While yes, I can't help you with the training side of it, but you've seen personal trainers. I mean, what are you guys really doing in the gym other than like showing a couple little form tips? You know what I mean? Like, you can't help with their macros. Typically, you're not helping them with their mindset because it's a half-hour session. Like, there's not enough value, in my opinion, that a lot of in-person trainers can offer that would match online services.
Now, kind of switching gears a little bit here, but along the same lines of your clientele, talk to me a little bit about how you stress balance with your clients. I guess I was thinking more on the macro side, but I guess lifting also applies this as well. Because if one of your clients, like say you're coaching me and I say, hey man, I'm going to Australia for 2 weeks. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to afford to go back. I'm not going to be like, I need to stay on this diet. I'm going to be like, bye bitch.
I'm sorry. So you said if you're going to Australia and you're on like a 2-week vacation,
like if you're on vacation, stretch, like, do you stress like, okay, it's not going to be a big deal if you fall off for a couple of days here and there, that type of thing?
Okay. So, yeah, I have a couple different processes with that. So ultimately, you know, you want to ask yourself, is this a regular occurrence? You know, there's some people who do like weekend getaways every month. I'm all for it, right? Reduce your stress however you want. But, you know, be honest with yourself. If you're, and this is depending on what health phase you want to be in. If you're in a deficit and you do weekend trips every month, you know, with your significant other, let's be honest with ourselves and like be a little bit more structured, because it's like a weekend getaway, right? You do it all the time. You can, of course, work in a healthier routine, right? And a lot of the times I still encourage minimal stuff. Get good movement, right? I'm not expecting you to work out every single day, especially if you're on a vacation, if you want to relax. Get some movement though. Go for a walk, get some sunshine. Don't be laying in bed all day doing nothing. Drink your water and get a good 8 hours. Like if you can nail those three things, I'm always going to encourage any like vacation and time off for yourself. Always. Now, there's the other side where it's like, hey, this is a vacation for me and my significant other, myself, whatever, that I haven't had in years. I've been waiting forever for this vacation. I want to, enjoy myself. I will literally tell a client, do as you wish. If you enjoy working out on vacation, I do personally. I like working out. So do it. I don't, by all means. I'm not going to enforce you to track because you've worked your ass off to get to this point. I'm imagining that we're in a position to where we've been working towards this vacation to be, in beach weather shape, if you will. So enjoy yourself. Any time that you spend there, you're going to get more bloated than anything. You're not going to build magically body fat unless you absolutely try to make everything an all-you-can-eat buffet every single time. You're going to drink more alcohol. So I'm saying to save yourself from natural consequences like a hangover, get your water and get your sleep. You shouldn't have any responsibilities. So there's no reason that you can't have 8 hours of sleep and enjoy the other 16 hours of your day. I think that's a fair trade. And when I explain that to clients, it's like, I'm not going to expect you to do, anything crazy, right? Like I'm not going to expect you to go and nail these protocols that I set forth for you. We built the foundation, or we built the structure leading up to this point that you don't need to worry about this stuff. You can enjoy yourself. The scale is absolutely going to fluctuate when you come back because you fucking partied, man. You had fun, like enjoy yourself. That's the consequence of seeing the scale go up a couple pounds from some of the sodium, the water, the poop you haven't pooped out yet. Like that's just a common thing. So when those types of things come up, it really just boils down to like what type of vacation this is. But I'm always going to encourage, no matter what, and this is really for anyone, get movement, drink your water, and get plenty of sleep. And you'll just see benefits in health just from doing those things.
I feel it's a good rule of thumb, though, because I know I was dating a girl for a while where they went away all the time. They went away I don't want to say once a month, but every couple of months they went away, and they would go to the same exact place that they had been going to for a few years. So in that case, do you really need to party that much? I mean, maybe a little bit here and there, but probably not like you're going to a place you may never go to again. But along to your point, if you're going on a honeymoon, for example, or something like that, like hopefully you only have one honeymoon.
Right.
I wouldn't really want to be tracking macros and worry about working out and stuff like that. But there are still basic things you can do. Like, is there any reason you can't get out of bed and go for a 30-minute walk in the morning or something like that? Like, who doesn't love to take a walk on the beach? Anyone can do that.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. The stuff that we teach isn't, you can't make it, like, it's not cookie cutter because it's for your whole life. Like, I'm trying to teach practices that you're going to be able to carry with you for the rest of your life. Like, I'm not trying to teach you how to just get a 6-pack once and then, hey, sayonara, take it easy. Like, if I have clients long enough, I'm putting them through every different phase of nutrition, right? Like they're going through it all. So they understand exactly what to do. They're empowered, they're educated. They're essentially, like, the way I get my gold star as a coach is that client is completely autonomous when it's all said and done. Like, they don't need me ever again, other than like a quick high five for doing a good job. Like that's always my goal, to where the client just gets it. Like they could go teach others. They could go teach their friend, or they can teach their kids, which is like my favorite thing. When I have, when a parent, mom or dad, says, I want to teach my kids a good example because, like, my parents were in the midst of diet culture and they showed me all the wrong things. So I want to make sure my kids don't get sucked into that. I want my kids to understand health and nutrition, and like working out can be fun and all these different things. When they say that, like, I immediately get way more invested into that client, because it's like, hey, if I can teach you, I'm secondhandedly teaching that kid as well. Like, I'm showing that kid as well how he should act, or she should act. And that's helping that next generation create another level of health. And for me, like, that's such an awesome, awesome thing.
That's an awesome way to look at it, that you have one client, but you really have essentially three clients indirectly because you're like you were saying, you're teaching their children indirectly as well.
Exactly. And
But
it's pretty cool.
so let's talk a little bit about your podcast now and kind of how that revolves around, what you do with that, and then I'll let you go. So what exactly does it revolve around?
So health and humor, our podcast. So pretty much in it of its name, we talk about the things I kind of mentioned here, especially in this last half, kind of just how to handle the life as it is in terms of health and nutrition and, all the different things of like diet culture, social media, how to interact in the gym intimidation, understanding your own self-worth. Like it's a lot of like good mindset conversations. And I think the part that we try to bring is the humor side of it, which is also like the human side of it, right? Like we could spend all day kind of talking back and forth about mindset and progressive overload, or how to make sure you nail your macros, or proper metabolic adaptation. Like we could, if we wanted to, right? But some people they can't relate to that if it's not something like just a regular conversation. So anytime people talk to me in any setting, I'm throwing in senses of humor just to make it more relatable. And when people laugh, they remember things. I don't know exactly why, but they remember things when you make them laugh. And I think, with our podcast, we offer that, we offer education to a point where it's also entertainment. And I think that's made it more fun for us to do, because I feel like I'm just having a conversation, kind of shooting the shit with like a random person about a particular topic. And I can throw in my, crash sense of humor or my brash sense of humor, and, no one really say anything about it. And at the same time, I'm helping educate people. I'm helping motivate people. I mean, the coolest thing is when people like share our stuff saying like, thank you for this podcast. And I'm like, you're welcome. Fucking sweet.
So how long have you guys been doing that?
About 6 months now. A little over 6 months, I think.
And how many episodes do you put out? It's one a week, right? You guys do?
So we skipped, we had a couple weeks where we weren't 100%. We're at like 30 episodes, I want to say. Maybe it's 26. It's 26 or 30. We have a bunch batched right now, so I think I'm counting ahead. But we officially have, and our goal this year is to release one every single week. So it's every Tuesday. It gets released in the morning. Hold on, I'm just pulling it up. Tell you exactly how many we have. We are 28. So we have about 30 some odd, like ready to go, essentially.
That's exciting.
Yeah, man, it's cool. It's as you know, dude, it's work. I think a lot of the times if you don't have a guest, it's figuring out the topic and then figuring out how to fill the space with said topic. We do shorter podcasts for sure. Like I don't think we've ever passed an hour, because we want to make it more for like your car ride to work. Something you can kind of just listen to in that 30-ish minute window. So you can get like a little motivation, pumped up before you go to work, or pumped up before you go to the gym, or, if you're taking a quick walk. We wanted to kind of put it in a realm where like people can try to absorb the information really quick, and not feel as though like they're, tied down to multiple layers of conversations to get, a gist of information.
That's the thing. Some people have very long podcasts. Like I listen
6-hour long podcasts.
Oh my God. Lex Friedman did one the other day. It was a 5-hour podcast. And I'm thinking, how is that even possible? It was about like the lab leak theory. So it can afford to be that long because that's a very extensive topic. But still, like that's a long time to just sit there and talk to someone. And it's a long time to just listen to. Yeah, right? Exactly. Like I try to listen to them while I'm like running or driving or anything like that. It makes the time go by. But I also have been thinking about doing...
Go ahead.
What'd you say?
No, go ahead.
I was also thinking about doing some solo podcasts without guests. The issue I've got with that is I'm like, A, can I make it long enough? And B, I like the idea, I do, but I feel like I might struggle with making it long enough and keeping it interesting enough for someone else. And that's kind of the point I'm at right now. Plus, I actually just genuinely sit down and like talking to people. But at the same time, I'm like, I could probably push out more content if I was just doing it by myself, because I don't have to coordinate schedules or anything like that. I just can essentially do it at 3 a.m. if I want to. I can do it at 6 p.m. if I want to. I can do it whenever I want.
Exactly.
So something to think about and play around with. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I've seen someone do it by themselves, I find it so impressive to talk to yourself for, a half hour to an hour without any like dialogue or feedback. It's just crickets. I think that's incredibly impressive, to say the least. I mean, I think you do a good job, especially if you just, like the questions you send over to me, like that's detailed, it's a good amount of questions. And I think you could easily go off. I think the only thing I would ever worry about for myself, and this is just me, is like getting on this like insane tangent on like a particular topic where like I just get like so ramped up about it that I like lose the point of the conversation. And I find myself going off in this like rabbit hole for 20 minutes. That would be my biggest concern, because I do that now in like short bursts, never mind if I was by myself.
I feel like with solo podcasts, it has to be more informational content focused. I can't imagine being like, I mean, Joe Rogan, he's, depending on the guests, he can be informational, but I can't imagine doing like stand-up comedy for an hour and a half on a podcast, or anything like that. Maybe that's just, I don't have the personality for it and that's not me. But I feel like every time I've listened to a solo podcast, every single time it's been informational focused.
And I think, depending, the topic itself is probably easier than others. I think if you're chatting about finance, there's a fucking decades worth of information you could talk about. It's just a matter of like, how can you keep it appealing to your viewers to want to listen about finance in a single person setting?
Right. What are your goals for your podcast, both for the short term? I know you said you want to post an episode every single week this year, but also for the long term. Like, where do you want to see this podcast over the next couple of years?
I mean, of course, you want to see it get to a point where like it's, considered regularly as like something that gets recommended to people like on a regular basis. Like, oh dude, health and humor podcast. Like, I'm not saying we have to be up to the top of the ranks with like your Joe Rogans. Like, I'm not expecting $100 million Spotify deal anytime soon, but it'd be one of those things to where though, like, of course we can monetize it. Like I said, we can break even. That's awesome. But we said from the beginning that we wanted to make it so it's something that people can go to and get just good quality information from like two humans that like get it. And I think for us, if we can continue to impact people positively and have them feel like good after listening to our podcast, I know it sounds cliche, but that's a big enough reward for me. The money is cool and all, but like knowing that we're impacting people's lives positively, I think that's one of the coolest things.
Hey, Spencer, man, I really appreciate you sitting down and talking to me. I had a lot of fun catching up with you. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you, or check out your coaching services, or check out your hilarious creative reels?
Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, at Spencer_Desiata, that's DESIATA. You'll find, of course, all my reels. You'll find my Instagram. You'll also find a link if you're ever interested in my coaching, right in my profile. And of course, you want to check us out at Health and Humor. That's Health and Humor. On Spotify, we're there. Feel free to check us out. Our podcast, we'll be releasing another one this upcoming Tuesday. And of course, we're going to have you on pretty soon, Josh.
Absolutely. I am always down, Spencer. Thanks again. All Spencer stuff will be linked in the description box. Make sure to go check him out. Make sure to go check out his reels. Like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one.